All right, so picture this. It's Valentine's Day, 1929 in Chicago.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's a snowy morning, And inside this ordinary looking garage,
Okay.
there's this group of guys, sharp suits, shoes, all polished.
Mm-hmm.
One of them even has like a carnation on.
Really?
Yeah, for the holiday.
Oh, wow.
So a black Cadillac pulls up,
Okay.
4 guys step out, 2 dressed as cops.
Oh, no.
And then, bam, gunfire explodes. A dog starts howling.
Wow.
And the Cadillac just barely avoids hitting a trolley as they're making their getaway.
Oh, my God.
And what's left behind?
What?
7 men dead. Jeez. It's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Of course, yeah.
And right at the center of it all, Al Capone.
Oh, yeah.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the life of this notorious gangster.
Okay.
And we've got some amazing insights with us today from Claire White.
Oh, yeah.
She's the director of education at the Mob Museum, featured on the American History Hit podcast.
What's really fascinating about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is that, as brutal as it was, it really marked the beginning of Capone's downfall.
Yeah, it's that classic rise and fall story.
Yeah, wouldn't you say?
Totally. We tend to think of Capone as just this ruthless gangster,
Right.
The mastermind behind the Chicago outfit.
Mm-hmm.
But his early life, doesn't exactly fit that whole stereotypical gangster upbringing.
It's true. His father was a successful barber.
Really?
Yeah. Owned his own shop.
Wow.
Which really challenges that whole poverty breeds crime narrative, doesn't it?
Yes.
It speaks to the struggles many immigrants faced in America back then.
Mm-hmm.
Capone's parents, they were Italian immigrants.
Right.
Just trying to build a decent life.
Yeah.
Striving for upward mobility.
Right.
But even with compulsory education laws coming into play, they weren't really enforced for Italian immigrant children.
So Capone drops out after the 6th grade.
Yeah.
And starts hanging out with his older brothers who, let's just say, weren't exactly choir boys. He ends up joining not one, but 2 gangs.
Really?
Yeah, the James Street Boys and the infamous 5 Points Gang in Manhattan.
The 5 Points Gang.
And that's where he gets his famous scar,
I was going to ask about that.
from a bar fight.
Oh, really?
Although, like many things about Capone,
Yeah.
details around the scar are a little murky.
There's a lot of mythology surrounding that scar, right?
Totally.
Some stories say he disrespected a woman.
Right.
Others claim it was just a random brawl.
Okay.
But regardless, that scar became a symbol,
Oh, yeah.
a badge of his tough guy image.
Oh, for sure.
It was also in the 5 Points Gang that he met Johnny Torrio,
Okay.
an early Italian-American mobster
Right.
who became a huge influence.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The 5 Points Gang wasn't just some small-time operation.
Oh, no.
They were a major force in New York's underworld,
Wow.
controlling a big chunk of Manhattan.
Jeez.
This was Capone's brutal training ground.
Yeah.
And when Torrio moved to Chicago, Capone went with him.
Okay.
That's when things really took off.
Before we get into Capone's Chicago days, though,
Go ahead.
it's important to note that the mob wasn't always about illegal booze.
Right.
They were involved in gambling, prostitution,
Oh, yeah.
you name it.
Okay.
Then Prohibition hits,
Oh,
and it's like someone handed them a golden ticket.
wow.
How did Capone and his crew seize that opportunity?
Prohibition changed everything for organized crime.
Yeah.
It created this massive demand for something that was now illegal.
Right.
And Capone, along with Torrio, saw the potential.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't just thugs. They were shrewd businessmen.
Yeah.
In fact, they were almost corporate in their approach.
Really?
They took control of everything.
Like what?
Production, distribution, breweries, distilleries, even trucking companies.
Ah.
They built a vertical monopoly on illegal booze.
This whole Prohibition era really foreshadowed the war on drugs, didn't it?
It really did.
Both created huge black markets fueled violence and ultimately failed to curb demand.
Yeah, exactly.
But back to Capone, he wasn't just lucky, he was smart.
Absolutely.
And he wasn't afraid to be ruthless.
And what's interesting is that he built his inner circle with people he knew and trusted.
Yeah.
Take Frank Nitti,
Okay.
his childhood friend.
Yeah.
He became a key player in the Chicago outfit. Capone wasn't just handing out promotions.
Right.
He understood the power of shared history,
Oh, interesting.
using it to create an almost familial bond within the outfit.
That loyalty must have been crucial in such a dangerous and unpredictable business.
Oh, absolutely.
And it wasn't just business partners, he even had family in the mix.
He was very devoted to his wife, May,
Okay.
and their son, Sonny.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because his own mother-in-law strongly disapproved of him.
Oh, no.
Could you imagine the family dinners?
Thanks.
But despite all that, Capone went ahead and married May,
Wow.
even though it was a bit scandalous because she wasn't Catholic.
Speaking of loyalty and family, let's talk about how Capone's inner circle ultimately played a role in his downfall.
Okay.
It all really started to unravel with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Right.
And the rivalry between Capone's South Side gang and George Bugs Moran's North Side gang.
Mm-hmm.
It was a battle for territory, for control of the bootlegging operations. What led to this bloody event?
Well, there was a lot of tension brewing between the two gangs.
Yeah.
Capone saw Moran as a real threat to his empire,
Okay.
so he decided to take him out.
Wow.
And to avoid any suspicion, he hired hitmen from outside Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, folks who wouldn't be easily recognized.
Interesting.
They planned the attack meticulously. On that fateful Valentine's Day, Moran's men were gathered in a garage, waiting for their boss.
Right.
Two of the hitmen, dressed as police officers,
Oh, wow.
approached the garage.
Yeah.
Thinking it was a raid, Moran's men let them right in.
So what went down inside that garage? Was it just like a chaotic shootout or something more calculated?
It was brutal and efficient.
Wow.
Imagine this, the hitmen, armed with Tommy guns and a shotgun,
Oh, geez.
lined up the 7 men against a brick wall and just executed them in cold blood.
Jeez.
No hesitation.
Wow. So Moran wasn't actually there.
He wasn't.
Wow.
He saw the police car pull up and decided to skip the meeting.
Oh, my gosh. Talk about a lucky break.
Talk about a lucky break. But
Yeah.
this massacre, despite its success,
Yeah.
was the beginning of Capone's downfall.
It seems counterintuitive that this victory would be his undoing.
Right.
Why was that?
The massacre sparked outrage in Chicago and across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
The brutality of the act, the cold-bloodedness of it,
Yeah.
turned public opinion against Capone.
Right.
And with the rise of visual media, newspapers and magazines were splashing images of the carnage all over the country.
Oh, wow.
People were getting a first-hand look at the dark side of the American dream.
Right.
And they didn't like what they saw.
Right.
President Hoover himself issued a direct order. Get Capone.
Wow.
It was no longer just a local Chicago problem. It was a national issue.
So the Fed started to crack down.
Right.
But how do you go after a guy like Capone?
Exactly.
He was incredibly powerful and well-connected.
You're right. Taking down Capone wouldn't be easy.
Yeah.
The violence was difficult to pin on him directly.
Mm.
So they went after something else, his money.
Oh, okay.
The IRS became the key player in his downfall.
Really?
They realized they could get him on tax evasion.
Okay.
And a Supreme Court ruling in 1927
Yeah.
provided the perfect opening.
What was that?
The ruling stated that even criminals had to pay taxes on their illegal income.
Oh, wow.
It was a real catch-22.
So it was either admit to being a criminal and file those taxes,
Right.
or get nailed for tax evasion.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Exactly.
But how did they actually build a case?
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly keeping receipts for all of his illegal activities.
It was a meticulous process.
Okay.
The IRS brought in teams of accountants
Yeah.
to pore over every scrap of financial information they could find.
Wow.
They followed money trails, paper trails, anything that could link Capone to his ill-gotten gains.
So like a real deep dive.
A real deep dive, and to
Yeah.
really get inside the operation.
Yeah.
They even planted undercover agents within Capone's organization.
Wasn't there an agent named Mike Malone who went undercover as an Italian-American mobster?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He got so close to Capone that they even rode in an elevator together.
Really?
You know, there's a great anecdote about Capone recognizing Malone later on during the trial.
What was that?
He supposedly said something like, "I should have known you weren't one of us. You Irish guys just can't help yourself."
That's amazing.
It's like a scene straight out of The Untouchables, isn't it?
Totally. So they build their case and gather all this evidence.
Right.
Did Capone just go down without a fight?
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
He actually tried to play the system.
Oh, really? How so?
Capone's lawyers struck a plea deal, thinking they could get him off with a relatively light sentence of 2.5 years.
Wow.
But then something unexpected happened.
What?
The judge, Judge Wilkerson,
Mm-hmm.
refused to accept the plea deal.
Really?
It seems Capone's lawyers were under the impression that they had an agreement with the prosecutor,
Oh, wow.
but Judge Wilkerson wasn't having any of it.
That does seem harsh. Didn't they have an agreement?
From what I understand, Capone and his team underestimated the intricacies of tax courts
Okay.
to make matters worse. Capone,
Yeah.
ever the master of PR,
Right.
held a press conference and bragged about the sweetheart deal he'd gotten.
Oh, no.
This backfired spectacularly.
Yeah.
Judge Wilkerson saw it as a blatant disregard for the court's authority
Hmm.
and decided to make an example of him.
So no more Mr. Nice Judge. What happened next?
On October 18th, 1931,
Okay.
Capone was convicted on multiple counts of tax evasion.
Wow.
About a month later, he was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison,
Wow.
hit with a $50,000 fine in order to pay over $200,000 in back taxes and court costs.
That's a lot of money.
It was a stunning fall from grace for the self-proclaimed King of Chicago.
Wow. Where did he end up serving his sentence? Was it Alcatraz right away?
Not immediately.
Okay.
He spent 2 years in the federal penitentiary in Atlanta
Okay.
before being transferred to Alcatraz in 1934.
All right.
By that time, he was only 35 years old.
Wow.
But his health was already deteriorating.
Yeah.
The harsh conditions of Alcatraz, the isolation,
Mm-hmm.
and the progression of syphilis took a heavy toll.
It's hard to imagine anyone thriving in a place like Alcatraz.
Oh, yeah.
Even someone like Al Capone, I visited as a tourist,
Oh, really?
and it's still a chilling experience.
It was incredibly brutal.
Yeah.
But even there, Capone found ways to adapt.
Oh, really?
He formed a band
What?
called the Rock Islanders.
The Rock Islanders.
Yep, was granted special privileges,
Wow.
even charmed some of the guards.
It really shows you that even in the most extreme circumstances, human beings will find ways to cope and even create a sense of normalcy. But Alcatraz wasn't the end for him, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
His declining health led to his early release in 1939.
Oh, wow.
He received treatment for syphilis
Okay.
and was even one of the first Americans to be treated with penicillin.
Wow.
But by then, the damage was already done.
Right.
He spent his remaining years essentially homebound in his Florida estate.
Really?
His mental and physical abilities significantly diminished.
What a tragic end to such a dramatic life. From the heights of power to a broken man all before the age of 50. It really makes you think about the price of power and the fleeting nature of success.
It does, doesn't it? Even someone like Capone, who seemed invincible at the height of his reign, couldn't escape the consequences of his actions. It makes you wonder what might have happened if Prohibition hadn't ended. Would he have found a way to adapt and stay on top?
That's a fascinating question. Do you think he had the business acumen to move into other ventures?
He certainly had a knack for identifying opportunities and exploiting them. Perhaps he would have diversified his criminal portfolio, moved into other rackets, but it's also possible that his violent nature and his inability to stay out of the spotlight would have eventually caught up with him.
So maybe Prohibition was both his making and his undoing, a double-edged sword that catapulted him to power, but ultimately led to his downfall. It's interesting to think about how his legacy has endured. Is he still considered the king of the gangsters in the public imagination?
He's definitely become a legend, an icon of a bygone era. There's still a certain fascination with him, especially for those interested in the history of organized crime. People still visit the Mob Museum, eager to learn all about Capone. But it's interesting to see how things are shifting. Newer figures like Whitey Bulger and El Chapo are capturing the public's attention now.
So Capone's star is fading a bit.
Perhaps. But his story, the rags to riches rise, the ruthlessness and the charm, the business savvy and the ultimate downfall, it continues to intrigue. He remains a symbol of a turbulent time in American history, a reminder of the allure and the dangers of power.
I have to say, this has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. I thought I knew the story of Al Capone, but there's so many surprising details, so many layers we uncovered. It just goes to show that there's always more to learn, even about the most infamous figures in history.
That's so true. History is full of surprises. And every story, no matter how familiar, has hidden depths waiting to be explored.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the world of Al Capone. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. And remember, if you're ever in Vegas, make sure to check out the Mob Museum and that infamous brick wall. It's a tangible piece of history that really brings the story to life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.